Now, if you're like me, the idea of a 450 horsepower small car with an available manual transmission and rear wheel drive is a really, really enticing, desirable idea. I'm always hankering for a nice canyon drive where I can roam my own gears, feel that push out of every turn, and hit the deer even faster than I would in a 200 horsepower E46. So the original M2 goes off of where the legendary 1M left off before that. And if you don't know, the 1M was basically where BMW engineers had a weekend to themselves, a little bit too many Wiener Schnitzels and other German things that German people like that I'm sure are great that I don't know about. And they thought, what if we put the N54 engine out of the 335i and the 135i, I guess, and we improve it a little bit, put it in the 1 Series coupe, and then fit the suspension and underpinnings from an E92 M3, and they created the 1M, which was a legendary M car that I will never be able to afford because of its status. BMW decided, hey, this actually makes sense. So when the 2 Series dropped, they made an M version of that, which most car reviewers actually preferred the feel of the M2 over the larger M3 and M4, despite the original M2 at least having less power. And then the M2 competition dropped with the engine from the M3 and the M4. So the M4 really made no sense at all. But now we're here in the modern, controversial BMW era where every new car that they drop is controversial and everybody hates it, and the M2 is no exception. I think the controversy is overblown on this car. Looking at it around here in the dealership, especially in its color, Zandvoort Blue, which is a really, really cool sounding German word, and it would sound awesome when you're showing it off at Cars and Coffee to everybody. Yeah, I got the M2 in Zandvoort. What do you have? Honda Civic? Get out of here. Overall, we'll talk about the styling in a second, but I think the controversy, as usual from BMW purists, is overblown, overdramatic. 450 horsepower, which is only 20 fewer than the M3 and the M4. 406 pound-feet of torque, which is exactly the same as the M3 and the M4. And it comes with an available 6-speed manual transmission at no extra or fewer costs compared to the automatic. This is the first one in Utah. It literally arrived last night, so I am not able to drive it. Hopefully at some point somebody will lend me an M2 to drive, but right now, all I can do is just show it as it sits parked here in the dealership. So here comes the part of the video that's subjective. I really, really, really like how this car looks. In pictures, it's a little bit polarizing. That front end, it's like they put it through a computer software, the regular M240i, and then they poorly rendered it without shading, if you get what I mean. It looks strangely a little bit more different than the M240i than you would expect. I'm probably talking complete nonsense, but this is the styling part of my videos where I usually do. Typical M door mirrors with the 2 posts. The top one doesn't quite connect, but it's just for style, and it's always looked cool since the E92 M3. The side, I think, is where it's best. These flared fenders on the front and the back give it a really, really nice, really mean look. Again, it's reminiscent of the original 1M, which was basically a regular 1 Series, but it had been to the gym and had taken some steroids, so it had some big muscles. It was cool. It was just a muscly little car. The flared fenders and things like that are a little bit more well integrated, so if you don't know what the regular 2 Series looks like, then it could be harder to spot. It is a really cool look. Those door handles, BMW is going back to the classic 90s door handles like what you would see on the E39 or the E38, which leaves me wondering if they freeze in the winter, I think is why those door handles died off in the first place, but they probably have some heating thing. It's BMW, they're Germans, they probably figured out a way around that. The wheels are not too in your face, which is good. They're black, which again is subjective. Some people don't like it. I personally do, but again, that's my opinion. And then on the back, the taillights look really, really good. Just standard 2 Series taillights. It's got those quad exhaust tips, which look really, really mean and cool. This one also has a carbon fiber package, which comes with an extra large spoiler on the back, which makes it look a lot better. And up front, it also has these carbon fiber, what'd you call them, aerodynamic things. Up front, it's got these carbon fiber splitter things on the side of the bumper, which on a car like this, I imagine that aerodynamics isn't so important that you'd need something like that to help with downforce and etc. It just looks a little over the top. My main complaint point with the look of the M2, however, is this rear bumper, which nobody's really talking about it, but to me, it just looks way too blocky. Too many sharp, hard, straight lines and angles that don't really fit in well with the rest of the car, which is very rounded. Not really a good look, but that would not put me off from buying this car if I had the money, which I don't, which is really sad. So now it's time to talk about practicality, as I usually do. From this angle, you can see how far this carbon fiber spoiler comes out from the trunk lid, which is cool. And you can also see the 50th anniversary of M badges, which some people don't like. I think it looks pretty rad, especially on my rusty E46. It looks pretty good, cleans up the look of that thing a little bit. And on here it says M2. There is no competition yet, but expect one to come out at some point. Maybe they'll make a CS or a CSL. There we go. This is weird. Not a power trunk, which is just, oh, that's so awful. I would never buy this car because it doesn't have a power trunk. I actually prefer not having a power trunk, and in a car this small and 450 horsepower BMW manual transmission for like what, $66,000, that wouldn't put me off. So we look inside, and for a car of this size, I think it's a pretty good trunk area. It's bigger than I would expect for a car this size. It is about the size of the trunk in my E46, which is a similar size car. But unlike the E46 that I have, it does have fold down rear seats, which is nice for practicality. If your golf bags don't fit back here and you have to fit them the other way, or if you take your M2 to the ski resort, which I guess you could if you have chains. My biggest complaint with the more enthusiast spec BMWs is the lack of a toolkit up here, because that's a BMW heritage thing, and most people buying this car won't care at all, but makes me a little sad that it's not there anymore. For trunk area, it's pretty good, about what you'd expect. If you want more room, then you should spend more money for the larger but also uglier M4. And now I am not really looking forward to fitting myself in the back seat of this car. So I fold forward the front seat, and then it slides forward electrically, which is pretty cool. This is where it's helpful to be thin. Ugh. Oh yeah, I did just review the larger M4 the other day. That video should be coming out next week, so we're gonna see how this compares. This is the part that I hate. Oh, yep, all right, yep, okay. Oh God. I'm 6'2.5". This driver's seat is in my driving position, obviously, and it's pretty bad. I'm looking for positive things to say about my rear seat experience, and well, my left shin is starting to hurt quite badly, as it is crushed between the seat and this panel here. At least my right leg is free to move around a little bit, but if I want to operate the climate controls, I have to. I do have a little bit of storage area right here where I could put my phone or something like that, which is that's kind of nice. But no center armrest, which BMW's two doors just would rather have climate controls than a center armrest, which doesn't make that much sense because it's such a small car. The vents are literally 3 feet away right there. So I don't understand why it needs to have rear seat climate controls over a traditional center armrest, but oh well. There's a speaker right here on this panel, and this weird texturing, like triangles and things, which is kind of cool. And I gotta say, yeah, it's really not comfortable back here. The back of this seat is really hard. It's just hard plastic. If you get the M bucket seats, which are carbon fiber, then I suspect it would be even more uncomfortable for me back here. In terms of headroom, yeah, it does speak for itself a little bit. It's about what I expected. I'd say it's worse than the 2 Series Grade Coupe, because at least that car had 4 doors. Oh, there we go. See, this is how you improve your legroom. If you fold forward the front seat when you're on the road on the Autobahn, then you can really stretch out. And that makes the backseat passengers more comfortable until the driver hits oncoming traffic because he's squished up against the wheel and can't see out the windshield. But for those few seconds until you get into a fatal car accident, then it's pretty good. It's quite comfortable. So we step in, and yeah, it feels quite low to the ground, which is, you know, it's an M2. Basically, what you would expect is that it's like the facelift 3 Series and 4 Series, but smaller up here. Feels about E46 size again, because that's about the size of this car. When it comes to the important stuff, which is driving position, it is quite easy to get comfortable. The seat goes up quite high, really high, and goes down pretty low as well. So despite being a small car, it's pretty easy to get comfortable up here. Steering wheel is an M steering wheel, so it's got M badge there, M stitching around it, which if you saw it in a 330i, then that would make me angry. But since it's here in an actual M car, it looks pretty cool, and it's leather wrapped, of course, so it feels really nice. M1 and M2 buttons are configurable drive modes. Paddles back here are in carbon fiber, which is a little bit of a tacky look if you ask me. On this door panel here, there's not much to note except for the M colors that are incorporated into this rubbery feeling part of the door here. It feels weird to touch, but the M colors on it look really, really cool. And then you've got your door mirror controls, your window controls, your trunk button down there. You've got a storage area where you can store things, maybe a water bottle, a smaller water bottle, but you could fit one up here. These seats that I'm sitting in are the standard seats that will come in the M2. They do have an extra little special M touch, which is the M colors wrapping around the bolster and the headrest, which I think is really, really cool, and at least at no extra cost as well. So these are what I would get. You can also opt for slightly over the top M bucket seats, which would be important if you plan on taking your M2 to track days all the time. Holes to put your harnesses through, etc., more bolstering. This one, however, does have a good amount of bolstering. Maybe on a track I could feel it not being quite enough, but I've never driven on a racetrack in my entire life outside of like Forza or Gran Turismo, so who knows? I might not know what I'm talking about. In the center here, there's a center storage area underneath the armrest lid with one USB-C port in there. And then moving forward, automatic transmission, which is not how I would order an M2. And I believe if you are serious about driving enjoyment when you're buying an M2, then you should get the manual transmission, because the M2 has always been more about how it feels rather than how fast it is. That's just the M2 and the old 1M's ethos. So that's what I would do. Just don't bother with the automatic unless you want it for daily driving, you live in a crowded city, or it is important that you get the fastest one. Then the automatic makes sense. And if you get the automatic, it comes with more M stitching around the shifter, which is really cool. And this shifter is actually more of an M type shifter where neutral's in the middle, drive is off to the right, reverse is left and forwards. If you're used to automatic M cars, then it's nothing surprising. To the left, I've got drive controls and things like that. Starting the engine is this red button here. The stop start system that you can turn off is there. Then there's parking sensors, M mode, drive setup, exhaust modes, things like that, and an automatic parking brake, which I think in an M2 it should have a manual parking brake. It goes back to driving feel and driving enjoyment. I think it could definitely use something like that. This wheel next to the shifter is a segue into the latest version of iDrive, which is slightly different from the regular iDrive 8 because it has more M touches and things like that. It is basically the same thing, which means that it comes with a ridiculous amount of applications that will take me 5 hours to go through if I were to do that, which I'm not going to. Your service center, connected drive store, BMW messages, system settings. But there is one app that's interesting, which is M Drift Analyzer, which I think is hilarious. It rates your M traction, how long you are drifting, the steepness of the angle of your drift, and rates your understeer, and it's like totally ridiculous. The M2 has always been the car where BMW engineers just go and have fun. It's definitely, like I said, it's a newer version of iDrive 8. The whole interface is angled compared to what I saw in the i4. It does look more modern, more different from something like Apple CarPlay or what Tesla has right now. It's really, really good, really easy to use, and it looks really nice too, except for the climate menu, which is a total mess. In this car, which just has heated seats and the fans, it's not that complicated because there's only 4 controls for the climate. But if you have something with a heated steering wheel and a bunch of other stuff, then when you're sliding back and forth to just find things, it makes no sense. Also, my air can be dynamic or balanced. Anyone know what that means? I think it just controls where the airflow comes out, but they can incorporate that better. I mean, dynamic to explain how air comes out of your vents. Yes, I want my climate to be dynamic. It makes no sense to me. So the climate menu is a pretty big loss for me. I'm not a fan of it. But everything else, when it comes to their latest version of iDrive, is really good, including this curved infotainment display, which looks really, really good, even in a small M2, which you wouldn't normally expect a big screen to work on in a car like this, but it does. This gauge cluster in front of me is digital, and it's slightly updated. It's more angular and it looks really cool. There's a map in the center, so it's reasonably intuitive enough. It could use a little bit more customization and control for the driver, but for me, I really don't care about that. This whole screen area, everything on the inside is more angular, more modern looking. The speedometer and the tachometer are in the M colors. And again, the angular look, it's reasonable to complain about a screen up here. If you're more into the Enthusiast spec BMW, you might prefer an actual analog tachometer, but I think they did a pretty good job of making this good enough. Here it says M Performance, which is, if you want a reminder of what M Performance is, you could either put your foot down, get a big smile on your face, or you could just look at the dashboard there where it says M Performance, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's M Performance. That's how your passenger knows that you got the high performance BMW. Underneath here, it is a 3-liter turbo 6-cylinder, which produces 450 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Again, that is just 20 fewer than the much larger and heavier M3 and M4, and 406 pound-feet of torque, which is exactly the same as what you'd get from an M3 and M4. That results in a 0 to 60 time of much less than 4 seconds. This automatic M2 is probably faster than the standard manual M3 and M4, which, as a manual transmission guy, hurts me to say, but it is true. Got these nice strut bracing things here, which add rigidity and also look really cool. And then it says BMW M Power, which they've been putting on their M cars ever since they've been making M cars, which is cool. And a nice big M logo, so you know who to blame when your rod bearings fail and you're on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck and you're all mad, and then you remember, oh yeah, it's a high revving, high performance engine made by BMW M Power, so it'll remind you, oh, of course, you won't be that mad about it anymore. And this engine probably has some pretty serious performance and good sound to match the performance-y looks, especially with all this carbon fiber on the outside. Again, the BMW M2 has been quite a controversial car since it just released very recently. And I think that the controversy is a little bit overblown for the most part. Yes, the styling is a little bit polarizing, but except for that blocky butt that it has, it's really not too bad. It's actually a really good looking car. The carbon on the front, again, I'm not a huge fan of, but it wouldn't put me off for buying it. And I really do like the M seats in here. And there are a couple things on the interior that I'm not a big fan of, like the fact that it has climate control for the rear seats rather than a rear armrest, which I think is a little bit more important, especially when you're never using the rear seats anyways in a car like this. And that M Performance decal badge on the dashboard is something that I would expect in something like a 330i with some M Sport package. In the M2, it looks a little bit out of place. It's a really, really cool car, and the controversy is overblown, especially since it has the performance that you would expect from an M2. It has the driving capability and feel and enthusiast features like manual transmission that you would want from a car like this. And again, it's a small communicative car that you can toss around corners more than an M3 or an M5. Again, I would really like to take this car out on the road right now and see how it drives, but two problems. One, I would rather drive the manual, and two, it's in the showroom for now, and these things, the M cars, the M2, the M3, and the M4, are so highly demanded right now that at my local BMW dealership, they can't keep them in here long enough to actually lend me one to review. If there's somebody that's watching that has a manual M2 that they would like to lend to me for a review, I'll drop my email in the description. So definitely please let me know. There is my in-depth look, walk around of the new BMW M2. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope everybody has an awesome day. Bye-bye.